10 strangers, one open register, and a silence so thick you can hear the clock ticking on the wall. Nobody moves, but everyone is calculating. The person at the back can see the counter clearly. There is no wall blocking the way. No locked gate. No police officer. No physical force preventing him from walking straight to the front. Cutting in line is usually not a crime. And yet, he stays exactly where he is. What is this invisible force field holding the line together? It's a silent social contract we sign every single day. You walk toward a group of strangers, identify the last person, and stand behind them. A few seconds earlier, that spot was just an empty piece of floor. It belonged to nobody. But the moment you begin waiting there, something changes. The person ahead has earned their priority, the person behind has agreed to wait for yours. If somebody steps into the gap ahead of you, it feels as though they have taken something that belonged to you. But what exactly did they take? You do not own that section of floor. There is no document with your name on it. You have not paid rent for the space. And yet, everyone in the queue begins treating your position almost like temporary property. That position is not created by the floor. It is created by time. The first person arrived earlier. They have waited longer. They have given up minutes they could have used somewhere else. The second person has waited slightly less. The third person, less again. In a queue, time becomes a currency, and waiting is the price you pay for your spot. By arriving earlier and accepting a longer delay, a person earns a temporary claim to be served before the people who arrived later. This does not mean the person at the front is more important, more deserving, or more valuable. It means the group has agreed to reward one thing that everyone can observe relatively easily: who arrived first. That rule is simple enough for strangers to use without knowing anything about one another. They do not need to compare income, intelligence, status, or bargaining power. They only need to remember an order. But this raises a strange question. If someone cuts in front of you and delays you by only 1 or 2 minutes, why can the reaction feel so much stronger than an ordinary 2-minute delay? Imagine the cashier suddenly becomes slower. The machine freezes. A receipt needs to be reprinted. Everyone becomes impatient, but most people accept it. Now, watch as a stranger breezes past the entire group, eyes fixed forward, and drops their item onto the counter with a sharp thud, as if the 9 people behind them simply didn't exist. The delay may be almost identical. But the emotional reaction is completely different. People stare. Someone sighs loudly. A few strangers exchange looks. Eventually, somebody says, "Excuse me. I think the back of the line is actually back there." The line cutter has not merely taken a few minutes. They have taken a position they did not earn. Everyone else paid the cost of waiting. The cutter is trying to receive the reward without paying that cost. And that threatens more than one person's schedule. It threatens the meaning of everybody else's waiting. If one person can ignore the rule and still receive service, then the people who followed the rule begin to look foolish. Their patience no longer feels like cooperation. It feels like a penalty for being obedient. That is why people can become angry even when the cutter joins the line behind them. Their own position has not changed. They may not lose any time at all. But the system has still been violated. They are not only protecting themselves. They are protecting the rule. Of course, a rule means very little unless someone is willing to enforce it. A queue rarely has an official police force. Instead, enforcement is shared across the group. It usually begins with very small signals. A stare. A raised eyebrow. A glance toward another person, asking silently, "Are you seeing this too?" Then comes a louder sigh, a comment under the breath, or the carefully polite question, "Are you in the line?" If the person refuses to move, the response may escalate. Someone points toward the back. Another person confirms that everyone else has been waiting. Eventually, an employee may be asked to intervene. The person standing right where the line was broken usually feels the most pressure to speak up. They're the one who just lost their place. But once they speak, the rest of the queue can support them. Yes, the end is over there. No, we have all been waiting. A group of strangers suddenly starts acting like a self-appointed court of law. There is a rule. There is evidence. There are witnesses. There is a violation. And there is punishment, even if the punishment is only embarrassment. No single person controls the queue. Enforcement is distributed among everyone who needs the rule to survive. But here is the important part. A queue is not really a line of people. It is a shared record of who arrived when. The physical line is only a convenient way to display that record. Standing behind someone makes the order visible. Nobody needs to remember a list because the list is physically arranged across the floor. But remove the straight line, and the queue can still exist. Think about taking a numbered ticket at a busy government office. You collect number 42 and sit wherever you like. The person with number 41 may be across the room. Number 43 may have gone outside to make a phone call. Nobody is physically standing behind anyone. But the order remains. The bodies are gone. The queue survives. The same thing happens with restaurant waiting lists, airport boarding groups, customer support tickets, virtual theme park queues, and apps that notify you when your turn is approaching. The true queue is not the shape made by the people. It is the stored order of priority. Once we understand that, the strange exceptions to queue rules begin to make more sense. Suppose a person who has been waiting for 20 minutes briefly leaves to use the bathroom, after nodding to the person behind them. When they return, the group allows them to reclaim their position because their investment was acknowledged before they stepped away. Why? Because the shared record still includes them. They had already invested the time. Their temporary absence did not necessarily mean they had abandoned the claim. We even extend this courtesy to placeholding for a friend, as long as the investment is clear. But if 10 friends suddenly arrive and join that person, the system collapses. The people behind them will object because the price of their wait just went up without anyone asking them. The problem is not simply that somebody joined a group. The problem is that the original queue no longer represents the amount of waiting everyone thought they had agreed to. A person who believed there were 5 customers ahead now discovers there are 15. The terms of the arrangement have changed after they already paid part of the cost. Queues can also make room for emergencies. Someone may say, "My flight is boarding in 5 minutes. Would you mind if I went first?" The people waiting might refuse. But they might also agree. A person with a medical problem, a disability, a distressed child, or another urgent need may be given priority without being treated as a line cutter. That reveals something important. A queue is not a perfectly rigid algorithm. It is strict about selfish exceptions but can be surprisingly flexible about exceptions the group considers legitimate. The rule is not simply, nobody may ever go ahead. The deeper rule is, nobody may take priority without a reason the group accepts. This is also why first come, first served is not always the fairest system. At a coffee shop, arrival time may be a reasonable way to decide who goes next. In an emergency room, it would be dangerous. A person with a life-threatening injury should not wait behind someone who arrived earlier with a minor problem. Airports may prioritize passengers whose flights are about to close. Stores may create express lanes for small purchases, shifting the reward from who arrived first to who can finish fastest, a different but equally transparent rule that the group accepts before joining. Some people receive accessibility assistance because equal treatment does not always mean identical treatment. A queue is fair only when arrival time is the right thing to reward. In those critical moments where need outweighs time, the currency changes, we stop counting minutes and start counting heartbeats. But in ordinary situations, arrival order has one enormous advantage. It is easy for strangers to understand. Nobody needs to prove that they are more important. Nobody needs to negotiate. Nobody needs to know the other people personally. Everyone simply agrees to exchange time for priority. And this agreement often works between people who will never meet again. Why cooperate with strangers when there may be no future reward? Part of the answer is reciprocity. You respect their position because they are respecting yours. You wait because everyone else is waiting. And when somebody breaks the rule, you deal with the awkwardness of calling them out because the system only works while people continue to believe in it. Speaking up may cost you something. It may feel awkward. The cutter may become angry. The situation may become embarrassing. But doing nothing also has a cost. If people keep getting away with it, the queue stops rewarding patience. People begin moving forward aggressively to avoid being exploited. The invisible walls crumble. The line dissolves, and in its place, a frantic, pushing crowd emerges, a sea of people where only the loudest and most aggressive survive. The rule disappears because nobody trusts anyone else to follow it. So people defend queues not only because they want to reach the front. They defend them because they want waiting to remain meaningful. A queue looks like one of the simplest structures humans create. Stand behind the last person and wait. But inside that small arrangement, strangers have created priority, temporary ownership, exceptions, enforcement, witnesses, and punishment. They have built a miniature legal system without signing a contract or appointing a leader. The floor does not remember who arrived first. The people do. And that shared memory turns empty space into order. People do not obey a queue because something physically prevents them from walking to the front. They obey because everyone agrees that waiting earns a temporary right. Stealing a turn feels like a crime because it's a theft of time. We obey because we trust that others will do the same. And as long as that trust holds, the invisible line remains the strongest wall in the room.